Hello again, everybody. This is Chris Mackey, and this is your second official Intro to Ladybug tutorial, or the second one in which we'll be working with the Ladybug components. And if you guys remember from the last one, so we have this file which you can download in the sort of link that's posted in the video description. But all we did was just importing weather data into Grasshopper and doing a few basic functions with it, like averaging the data together or calculating comfort. So in this video, we're going to take this data and actually produce some visualizations in our Rhino 3D interface that's over here that we've been kind of neglecting, and so we gotta give it some love and make some visualizations for it. And so we're going to do that first by just making some basic colored charts of some of these data. So I'm going to actually start, because we're not so much focused on doing operations and functions to the data right now. I'm just going to delete all these old things that we were working with, and just start with our basic data that we imported into Ladybug. And so one of the things that we can do with this, one of the easy things we can do right off the bat, was make a colored chart with this colored chart component. And so if you guys drag and drop that onto the canvas, you'll see it's got, it's this little logo, this little sign on there, and it's right here under the visualize weather data. And this is probably where for the rest of the intro video, we're mostly going to be using components that come from this tab, this little, or this, I guess it's a sub tab. I guess Ladybug's a tab, and this is the sub tab. So okay, and you can plug in any of these input data of dry bulb temperature, wind speed, all these things. Any of them can be plugged into the input data here. And so let's say if I want to take the air temperature, the dry bulb temperature, and hook that up to there, you guys will see after I mean, it's a little slow on my computer because it's a bit old, but it might be faster on yours. But it's going to take this data and produce to us a nice, well, I guess if we zoom out in our Rhino interface, but it's a nice 3D colored chart of air temperature for the New York weather file that we were looking at from the last video. And you can see it gives us a nice little legend and everything, and it gives, it allows us to get a sense of how hot and how cool it gets. But I mean, so the thing is, the wonderful thing about this component is that it's not totally static, that you don't have to necessarily accept it for the way it is right now. So I'm gonna just bring up my memories, or my card sometimes makes the Grasshopper interface goes away, my graphics card. But you can get that back by hitting Grasshopper. And I'm going to actually, from now on, I think I'm going to keep both, a sort of view into the Rhino and a view of the Grasshopper here. But let's say, so this is a really long plot. And, and again, it's doing that because it's plotting, 65 days of the year in 24 hours and using the same unit for each. So let's change the X scale of this graph. So that it's not quite so long and we can see things easier. And we can do that easily by bringing up a panel, and the shortcut to do that, if you double click on your canvas to start searching, and you just hit a quotation mark, it will automatically start writing stuff into a panel for you. So let's say we want our X scale to be a quarter, or 0.25 of what it is right now. So you just type 0.25 and then hit enter, and you'll get a panel that has 0.25 in it. And then once you have that, all you have to do is hook that up to the X scale of the 3D chart, and it will remake that 3D chart to have an X scale of 0.25. And that's more, it's around where I usually like to see my 3D charts. So you can see it's a bit more manageable, a little more scrunched up. And let's see, I actually, even though we make it as a 3D chart, to be honest, I really kind of like it to just view it flat. And so the way to do that is to set the Z scale to 0. So I'm going to do that by Control-C and Control-V on the panel, and double-clicking inside of it and typing 0 and hitting OK. And so you got a panel with 0 in it that we can then hook up to our Z scale. And then that's going to recalculate the 3D chart to basically just to be flat. So that, because the colors are kind of saying the same thing as the Z scale anyway. So I kind of like it that way. And then because it's flat already, I kind of prefer to view it in top view. And so the way to get back to top view is to double click on perspective, and you'll see in the Rhino viewport it might give you 4 different window options, but usually the upper left is top. And you can go and you zoom out in there, and we get a pretty nice looking colored chart of temperature for the whole year. That's auto scaled, has an auto legend here where the red is 36, the hottest possible temperature, and the blue is -13, the lowest temperature. But now, we've already mentioned that this chart is interactive, one of the really nice things about, a chart that would be interactive is if we could change these colors to be something meaningful. Say, like, if the red was anything that was clearly, like, very hot, or just, something that wasn't comfortable anymore. So that anything like that would be colored in red, and something that was, too cold for most people would be blue. And so we can do that easily with this legend par input to the component here. And the legend par actually takes something that comes from another Ladybug component that you can see is under the extra tab here. So it looks like a little legend with a P on it. And so if you take this legend parameters component that's in the extra tab here and drag and drop that onto your canvas. It shows up pretty large because I was really zoomed in there, but I'm going to move kind of some of the components to the side so we can make some room for this. But this essentially allows you to set certain things like the lower boundary and higher boundary of the legend that you can then plug in to change the 3D chart. So I'm going to do something very similar to what we just did for the X and Y or the X and Z scale there, and I'm going to bring up a panel by hitting quotation marks, and we'll set maybe the lower boundary to, let's say, probably anything that's lower than like 12 degrees Celsius is definitely, that's probably going to be pretty cold for the outdoors, and people wouldn't be too comfortable for that long. But obviously you can change it to be whatever you want, maybe it's different for every climate because people will adapt to their own climate. And then maybe we'll set the high bound to be, let's see, anything maybe above like 26 is going to start to be pretty hot. So we'll make a panel with 26 in it and hook that up to our high boundary. And then when we hook these legend par up to the 3D chart, as I'm going to do right now, and release, now it's going to recolor the chart so that anything that's above 26, above our high bound there, is going to be red, and anything that's below our low bound, our 12, is going to be blue. And so we can begin to get a sense, all right, anything that's in between is, generally kind of okay, comfortable for people outside. We can get a sense of which months are good for that. So after we customize the 3D chart and get something that we want, eventually, especially if you're a designer, you usually have a different interface where you maybe set line weights for these things and do some different things to that. And so the way to sort of get this geometry that's been made, I should say this first. What has actually been made to create this 3D chart that we see displaying in our interface? So one of the things that we get out of here is a mesh, and that's the colored thing. That's the thing that's giving us all these nice colors, in our Rhino interface. And then we also get some curves, which are generally these things that are defining the different months here and the different times of day from 12 a.m. to 12 or to the next day. And then we get the legend sort of on its own thing, which is a bunch of sort of trimmed surfaces essentially that are and a colored mesh that are basically for the text that we want. And so the thing is, if we want to get this sort of out of our Grasshopper interface, our sort of parametric adjusting interface, and into, say, the Rhino interface, so maybe we could start to edit a bit more or export to our other programs where we can set line weights and things. The way to do that is just to right-click on any, this works for any Grasshopper component. Some of you may already know this, but we just have to right-click on the component and select this bake. And what bake does is that it, essentially takes this parametric geometry in Grasshopper and puts it into the Rhino interface. And it will ask you what layer you want to put it on. Right now I only have one layer for default, so I'm just going to hit OK anyway. And you'll see that this geometry now goes into our Rhino interface. And I'm going to turn the preview off in Grasshopper, so you see you can right-click on any component and turn the preview off too, which means that it will stop displaying the Grasshopper thing. And you can see that the way I have it displaying now, so I'm in a mode in Rhino where the mesh doesn't have any colors. And that's specifically a wireframe mode. So you can change that to, say, like a shaded mode if by right-clicking on the little tab up here and going to shaded. And you can see, and then that should bring in my colors. And you guys might still have the little frames, the little wireframes for your mesh here. But the way to get rid of that is, there's also something under options that allows you to turn off and you go to view, display modes, I guess you specifically want shaded, and then you would uncheck the show mesh wires if you don't want to see those things. But basically what this means though now is that this isn't. Oh, it looks like we're also still in wireframe here, so I'm going to change that to shaded again. But we have our geometry, our sort of mesh that's been baked into Rhino as geometry, as Rhino geometry. And these are curves in geometry. Those lines have been turned into curves. And these are surfaces. Our text is a bunch of surfaces. And, and from here we can do something like, these meshes can be rendered in Rhino. So we can move maybe the mesh onto its own layer. Maybe we'll create a new layer for mesh. And we can begin to just organize and get this stuff prepared for for export. So we could change object layer and then maybe turn off the mesh, and then export this to Illustrator or something else. Using the export. So so you guys get the basic sense, the useful of this, that you could really format and customize it. I'm going to turn this on and just actually delete this all from the Rhino interface for now, because there's actually even more stuff that you can adjust in the Grasshopper interface that we haven't covered yet. So that's just kind of to show you what you can do afterwards. But I'm going to turn the preview back on the 3D chart by right-clicking and going to preview again. All right, so we've got our chart back, and actually I will say, maybe I'll just show you quickly, you don't necessarily need to export to Illustrator to really have something useful here, that sometimes you can just take a screenshot of this. But you may be thinking, oh, well, this is kind of this transparent red color, that Grasshopper defaults to is a little, it might not be too nice for what I want to show to my client or my professor in architecture school. And so you can change any sort of color of a surface or anything using a native Grasshopper preview component. And you bring that up by double-clicking on the canvas and typing preview. And you'll see this custom preview component is the one that we want to use. And then so we can just hook up the graph curves. Let's say we want those to be black. And then maybe we'll hook up the legend. And importantly, to keep both hooked up to the preview component, we have to hold down Shift and then connect it and release it, and then we get both of them connected to the preview. But then you say, okay, well but that's still ugly hot pink. And the way that we change that is what we input here as shader or swatch into our preview component. And so we can change that by double clicking on the canvas and typing swatch, color swatch, and then hooking that up to the preview component. And you'll see, okay, well, it turned it all white at first, which isn't good on a white background. But if you double click on that swatch, you can change it to say like black, which looks pretty nice. And and then you're set. You can just take a print screen of that, and you're ready to go. But all right, so let's show you guys a few more other things that you can adjust. We didn't really get all the way through this legend part here. So let's say you want to change the colors. Like say that you've got a specific color scheme that you're working with on a project. And I'm just going to select this and make some more room here. You can change those custom colors here by inputting colors into this component. And the sort of easy way to do that I'm going to show you now because it's not always straightforward how to do it with the Grasshopper components. But if you double click on the canvas and start typing gradient, there's this gradient component that allows you to make any sort of custom gradients. And if you right click on it, and look at presets, there are a few options here that they give you. One of which is the one that Ladybug's already using here. But let's make our own custom gradient. You guys probably don't have this one, but I find it really useful to have like cold stuff appear in blue and red stuff, and hot stuff appear in red. And we can make that basically by editing this green, yellow, red one. So I'm going to click that. And then so you can just right click on any of these well, I guess I didn't hit it right on the nail, but if you right click on that little dot, that'll bring up an interface where you can change the hue. So let's change this more to be something closer to blue, and let's up the value to be fully set, not so dark. Let's take this middle value, right click on it, and we'll totally desaturate it to make it white. And then the red value is pretty good as it is. But you can see the component's orange, so it's not really outputting anything yet. And that's telling you that you need to put in something to this T. And you can see if you ever, a bunch of Grasshopper components, if anything ever goes wrong, they'll give you this orange warning usually that'll tell you what to do. So you have to put in something to T. And what T is essentially it's a set of values between the lower boundary, which here is 0 by default, and the upper boundary, which is 1. That will essentially output colors along this gradient. So let's say, so we want maybe values from, 0 to 1 that go in intervals of 0.1. And the easy way to do that in Grasshopper is with a series. So if I double click and type series, that'll bring up a series. And you see by default it makes a series going from 0 to 9 in steps of 1. But we want a step size of 0.1. So we can do that pretty easily by, say, making a panel and typing 0.1. And hooking that up to n, or the step size here, which you see if you hover over it, it tells you it's the step. And then you hook up that series to t, and then now the component works, and you get a series. If I were to hook up a panel from this custom colors, or this gradient component rather, you'll see that we get RGB values for colors. And then this is what you can then plug into the legend parameters. And as soon as I plug this into the legend parameters, you'll see that it will rewrite those legend parameters coming out there, and it will change the legend par of our chart for us. And you can see, so now it's it's a little bit clearer. We know that fully saturated red is too hot, and the rest of the fully saturated blue is too cold. And so you can use this to try and add some meaning to your graphs by changing the colors. But okay, guys, I know this has been a kind of long video, but there's one other very important thing that I want to show you while we're still on this 3D chart. And that is, well, actually maybe a couple of things, but the really important one is this next one, which is called the conditional statement. And so all of the visualized components that almost all of them in Ladybug have a conditional statement, which basically allows you to get rid of anything that doesn't meet a certain condition. So let's say I'm only interested in the temperatures that are above 12 degrees Celsius. You don't really care. The parts of the year that are too cold, let's just not worry about them. And so the way that I can get rid of all those parts of this chart is by inputting a conditional statement here that basically would say, in our case, and this will make sense in a little bit, but it would say A is greater than 12. And so all that we have to do is bring up a panel. So I'll double click and put quotations and just type into a panel A is greater than 12 and hit enter. And essentially what this is saying is that the variable, the first variable that's plugged into this chart, if it's greater than 12, keep it. If it's not, get rid of it. And so when I plug A is greater than 12 into conditional statement, you'll see that it will remake the chart this time, keeping all of our same inputs, but it will get rid of anything that is less than 12. And this is a very, just you guys, if you're not familiar with Python, this is actually a statement in Python. This is one of the things that you can type into those Python components. And so this is one of the ways we're trying to be educational and to give you a pathway to understanding what's going on inside the components. But you can see, all right, so our chart gets rid of anything that's is less than 12. But now you can use this for several types of things. So let's say I'm gonna actually just disable this component for a second so it doesn't recalculate everything. But let's say I'm gonna disconnect the legend par because maybe we're not too interested in the colors specifically right now. And I'm gonna give us a little more room above here. And the thing is, we can input now multiple actually types of data. So we don't just have to, I know we've been working with the temperature in our input data, but we could hook up multiple things to this. So let's say we want to hook up, we want to see the wind speed as well. So we can take the wind speed, and now holding down shift so that we're adding it to the component, we can hook that up and get two things that are connected to our 3D chart. And maybe let's see, we'll take one other thing like relative humidity, and hold down shift and hook that up into our 3D chart. And then I'm going to re-enable the component just by right-clicking and hitting enable. And this time when it makes the chart, it's going to make a chart for all three of those variables, but it's going to apply this conditional statement to all of them. So it's only going to show parts of the chart where the temperature is greater than 12. And so you can see also you can use this now to go deeper and say, like, you were just interested in the times of the year where the temperature is greater than 12, and let's say and the humidity was greater than 50 or something, 50%. So you can see, all right, so just to show you guys, we got charts now for just these times of the year where the temperature is greater than 12. And so you get a percent humidity here, you get a meters per second of wind, and these little labels tell you what is there. But let's say, yeah, so let's do what I had just said before. I want, temperature is greater than 12 and relative humidity is greater than 50. And so the thing is, so each one of these things that we input into here has a variable associated with it. So the first one is A, which is temperature. The second one we connected was wind speed, which is B. And then the third one we connected is relative humidity. And then so I can type something, and that would be a C, essentially. So if I want to only select the values where, actually let's just look at, times of the year when people are going to get heat stress. So maybe we'll say actually the temperature is greater than 26 or something, and then we'll say and C is greater than 50% humidity. So you guys get the sense here. It may take a while for you to get used to this, but you're saying temperature A is greater than 26 and humidity C is greater than 50. And so now when I set this to true, it's going to cut out any of the parts of the graph that don't meet this conditional statement. Okay, and I kind of fast forwarded there because I didn't want you guys to wait through my slow computer again. But you can see, so now we get just like the hottest parts of the year, essentially, where we worry about people getting heat stress. And we get to know, the wind speed during then to maybe see, okay, could we actually still cool people down with the wind? And you can use this to create custom charts to say what you want to say. So all right, I know that was very long, guys. Thank you for sticking with it. But this was introduced to a lot of the basic concepts that you'll see in a lot of the other Ladybug components. In the next one, we're going to work with some of these again on some of the other visualization tools, specifically on the sun path next. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.